Copyright in these lectures is either owned by the ANU or a third party who has licensed the ANU to use it. Students may use the recording for personal study only. No lecture may be communicated online, copied or shared without the prior permission of the ANU.
Fully completing this course, especially when you're going to sit the CFA exam, it will help you a lot understanding the financial statement analysis. So now it's 1:05. We'll start today's lecture. We're not going to have any lecture slides or something I'm going to show you on the big screen. We have concluded our discussion of how we may use the historical financial accounts to understand the company in the past few weeks, and how we reorganize the financial statements of Woolies so that we can have a better measure of the company's economic activity or its performance in our valuation context. So hopefully you should be finalizing, reorganizing the financial statement, understanding the company's operation in this week or next week, at least before the first week of the teaching break. So today we're going to deal with even more important issue in valuation: how we're going to understand the business drivers. So if you find, understanding the financial statements, entering data into KGW model has been overwhelming difficult, that's only the preparation for your valuation. We haven't started our valuation yet. Now we're going to have our first step in valuation. We don't jump into the numbers just without understanding the company. So you have been reading Woolies annual reports for the past 10 years, especially they released their latest financial year results on Monday, and you should have very updated information of the company's performance in the past financial year, their strategic plans going forward, and the performance of its competitor, which is Wesfarmers or Coles. The results of Wesfarmers have been available for a week, so you have all of the key information you need to understand the industry, understand the business, to forecast for the next 5 years. So today we are going to try to show you how we make this forecast, or how we're going to pinpoint the business driver. Business driver tends to be quite big word and quite general in the sense, the business driver, you probably will think, GDP growth. If our country, the economic condition is promising and we have a positive prospect, the company is going to perform well. In the narrow sense, yes, it is correct. In the sense that, if the general economic performance is good, in the sense like as evaluated by the Reserve Bank of Australia, on average, companies managed reasonably by the management team should be okay. But I want you to think again and deeper. If the economy is performing really well and we have the low interest environment, and which is another favorable factor, a lot of things can play more important role to the revenue of Woolies in the next 5 years. The demerger, of course, from Wesfarmers, and the management team, of course, will have more flexibility, freedom to exercise their discretion of managing the company. No big boss will tell them what you should do in your job. And what else? Other competitors. And think about their own strategic plans. They have their list of changes to turn around the company for its food retailing, for the Big W business, and for other smaller assets as well. So are these strategic plans going to be executed as the management expects? Even in the next 12 months, it's uncertain. If you have been following the news coverage on Woolies and Coles, you should know that there have been doubts raised by the analysts about how Woolies will perform even in the next 12 months, in the next financial year. So the revenue, it looks like, okay, we have the general economy, good condition, and we may just, okay, the economy is forecasted to grow at about 3%, and okay, we assume Woolies will take the full benefits of that 3% GDP growth. Is that the case? So if you consider Australia's GDP, please have a look at the ABS reporting on the GDP basket. It's a very large basket of all kinds of business activities within Australia, not just food retailing. Different industries will benefit to some different extent from that 3% GDP growth forecast. Some industries will be winners, some industry will be losers, some industries will be maybe very close to that 3% growth. Where are you going to put Woolies if you want to forecast Woolies revenue in the next 5 years, just using the GDP as the driver? Is that really the driver for Woolies revenue? How do they generate their revenue? They sell baked beans, eggs, fresh veggies, liquors, and some other services to customers. Okay, so you have to put yourself in the shoes of the customers and think, there are two big players in the food retailing. If I'm going to shop for my family, which shop I should go? These are the choices. The choices made by consumers will actually drive the revenue of Woolies. They do have the approaches like improving customer services and other optimization of the resources within the company in place. And what will be the responses of the other major player in the market, Coles? If you are aware of the marketing campaign recently, the mini collectible marketing campaign by Coles is very successful. And Woolies has blamed this very successful marketing campaign for their poor performance in the first several weeks of trading in this financial year. So if you're interested about this, do effective search of Coles, Woolworths, food retailing using these keywords, and you will have the list of news stories. You probably get a very brief description of what happened with these companies, but if you go to read the Australian Financial Review and the Australian Sydney Morning Herald, you will have the full story. So that will give you more ideas, okay, what's happening in the market right now and the pressure faced by the Woolworths management. Now we go back to the drivers of Woolies revenue. So we may consider that, okay, we assume in the market there are only 2 households, and luckily we have 2 food major retailers in the market as well. So I use example to show you how the revenue can be driven by the customers' choices and other factors within the economy and with the households. It's not like as simple as we take an average of the past 5 years' revenue growth. That number might be a good gauge of the revenue growth of the company in the next 5 years, but it doesn't show the driver of the company at all. For some industries, that might be a good numerical analysis, but since you're in the training phase, I don't want you to just go take that number as your target. Our objective is still to understand the business, understand the industry deeper. So I'll just have a very simplified model of 2 households in Australia and 2 food retailers in Australia, but they are reasonable estimate. So we have Woolworths and Coles. We have household 1. the first household, we're going to have a typical Australian family. We call them parent 1, parent 2, yeah, I don't use mom and dad anymore to just, keep up with what's happening in the world. And the same in household 2. Okay, that's quite representative. But according to census data, Australian households have been shrinking, and the single-person households have been rising dramatically in recent decades. So that's pretty much typical of an Australian family who would like to shop at Woolworths or Coles. For you guys, you probably will just need to go to a 7-Eleven to grab a bottle of water or a V-drink. So we are talking about the majority of the people who shop at Woolworths and Coles. So with each household, I'm going to still have a very simple assumption that for every household, I'm just going to give them a box. I'm not going to draw the shopping trolley and the food in it, and I'm not going to embarrass myself. So I'll give each household a box so that they're going to shop once a week, and they're going to buy all of their grocery needs from that box. So, for example, for my family, we need 2 dozens of eggs, 2 liters of milk, and $50 worth of fresh veggie, $50 maybe worth of protein like meat or something like that. So we'll put that, the value of the grocery they need from Woolies as $100 per week. And for household 2, they buy the same quantity of food and at the same price from the 2 food retailers. Now, that's the price for 2018. What about 2019? We don't care about costs for now. We are valuing Woolworths. So that's what we are trying to figure out. What's driving the revenue of Woolies and revenue growth? They are 2 different things. And we focus on the next year so that we have some confidence in terms of understanding what are the driving forces and avoid the uncertainty of further years. So what do you think? What will happen, or some factors will play in a role so that Woolworths will generate more revenue for the next 12 months? What drives the revenue of Woolies? Any suggestions? Or just guess? At least. Increase in demand from that household. How? That's a very good start. How demand can be higher from that household?
If they have multiple.
Excellent. So they're going to have another child. So I'll take myself as an example. Before having children, 1 dozen of eggs will be enough. Okay, just a little bit fresh veggie and things. The grocery will be enough because we used to eat a lot at restaurants and takeaways, so we didn't really cook a lot before having children. But after having children, okay, obviously that's going to increase the value of the necessity in terms of grocery for my family, and Woolworths is going to generate higher revenue. What's that driver? Excellent. Population growth. That's actually the single most important driver of all businesses in Australia. How much do you know about Australian population? What's the population number? Three, less than 30. So I'm still going to use an assumed simplified case. I'm going to assume 10 million Australians shop at Woolworths, and another 10 million Australians shop at Coles, and the rest of them will shop at smaller supermarket chains like IGA or independent stores. What's the natural growth rate of that? Or natural growth rate of the population? Have you ever checked anything from ABS? GDP growth, population growth? Australia is one of the very few advanced economies in the world that still has a positive natural growth rate of the population, partially driven by the resource boom, that families are wealthier, so they tend to have more children, and but at the same time, the population is aging. So, but the net result is a still net increase of population. What other factors will drive the population growth? Population, okay, people live longer. What else? Something that's exogenous or external. So natural birth is just the net of the people who are babies who are born, and reduced by the number of people who die. So what's the other major driver of population growth in Australia? Migration, excellent. So population, we have on top of the natural birth, the natural growth rate of Australian people, Australian household, we have another important contributor, which is migration. Go to check out the number from ABS. Okay, that's one important driver of revenue of Woolworths. Other than we say GDP growth, even if you're going to run the regression, so-called try to identify the correlation between revenue growth and other economic indicators, probably population or the migration trend will be more important parameter than just GDP, because these are the underlying fundamental drivers of the GDP growth as well. Any questions or comments you would like to raise? Okay, we'll move on to the next driver. Okay, so Woolworths will expect, okay, we have larger families and they're going to buy more from me, and what else can they can do, or it's another possibility that Woolworths to generate revenue growth and higher revenue. What's the other driver?
Income growth.
Sorry?
Income growth.
Can you please speak?
The growth in the income.
The growth in income. Thank you for that. I was about to discuss that later, but we can still discuss this. Okay, the income of the household. It is a driver, but it drives the revenue of Woolworths in a different way. So we assume that's the family disposable income. We just make it simple. Okay, that's $100. $100 for the everyday necessities like the grocery, and the $50 for the mortgage. That's a grocery, mortgage, and they have $50 left. And we know that, okay, this tends to be, we assume this tends to be quite stable. When they take out the mortgage, the payment will be the same unless they refinance or buy a larger house. With the discretionary income, if income, the total income that buy is larger, and they're going to have higher discretionary income. Now, okay, for Woolworths, how much is going to benefit from that increase of discretionary income? Like, okay, for that week, I have $50 left. I decide to spend it. I don't want to save any money. Okay, my family is like this, 3 children, 2 parents, and okay, I'll hold that $50. I'll go to Woolworths. I'm going to spend the money at Woolworths. Is that the case? That's everything we need for the family. Do I really need to buy another dozen of eggs? No. Or I stock up something else like laundry liquid or face tissues? No. We spent the money on something fun. What kind of thing that you can consider as fun at Woolworths? What kind of things supposed to be fun? Nothing, not really. But something can be classified as fun or leisure, like party supplies, barbecue sausages, and these kind of things. But that's very small range of choices. So with that increased discretionary income, I'll go to buy movie tickets or something fancier like a new iPhone, or if I have like a sudden increase of my income, I'll have a holiday. Am I going to spend a little bit more at Woolworths? Maybe, just maybe a little. Okay, have more money. As discretionary income, I may go to Woolworths to buy more wine. I'm going to have more parties. I'm going to have more barbecue at the backyard. But Woolworths will benefit from very small portion of that increase of discretionary income. That's why the company is called consumer staple. We buy that staple products from the company, not really the discretionary things. So the other companies in the market, like fashion industry, the hospitality, the restaurant, can benefit more from the increase of discretionary income. And that can have a feedback effect on Woolworths' revenue. So sometimes you observe the increase of discretionary income, and you will find the family will actually spend less money on the grocery because they feel safer, they feel wealthier, they have more money to spend. We're going to eat at the restaurant. That's the feedback effect from that increase of discretionary income. So when the economy is not really performing well, or there are a lot of uncertainties, when people start to be really nervous about the prospect of their job, their economy, you will see the revenue might jump a little bit as the food retailers, because people are taking a more conservative approach, allocating the household budget. When people are more relaxed and positive about the prospect of the job or the economy, you might find they reduce the budget to buy the grocery. They spend more on leisure activities or dining out. Third question? Sorry, I didn't. No, they're not the same. The disposable income is the income that the family receives after paying all of the utilities that maintain the everyday life of the company after paying tax, especially after paying tax. And sometimes people will consider this superannuation contribution taken out of their income, after tax income as well. So, where I was. Okay. So discretionary income, or maybe as we can use the average wage of Australian people increase, might be a driver of Woolworths revenue, but the impact can be very small. On the other hand, you might find Bunnings business may be better because people have more money on their hands. They will start their long-delayed renovation project of their house. So that driver can be uncertain, or sometimes the impact on the overall revenue, especially revenue growth, can be quite limited. Any other suggestions? What are the other drivers of Woolworths revenue? Inflation, yes, very good. So even if there's no additional population or immigration, no population increase, and you can still see the inflation will feed into the basket, the box of groceries. The inflation in Australia is expected to be quite stable, managed by the Reserve Bank between 2 and 3%. Right now, it's at the lower end of that range. So next year, we expect the same amount of food will be worth $102. That's a revenue growth, but obviously not a real revenue growth. If you can recall that when we talk about the forecasting model of the company's revenue, the first approach is inflation plus real growth. So we are interested in that real growth. So inflation can play a part, but real growth will be the thing that we try to incorporate into our valuation. There's another very important driver of all these, revenue growth and revenue. What is it? Look at here. What's the other driver? Just guess. Say it. Huh? Competition. It's not exactly, but I do think you are on the right track. Can you explain what's the other possibility that Woolworths can generate higher revenue or higher revenue growth? Can you explain?
For example, who says the marketing campaign has something similar?
Good, yes. For Woolworths, there are another 10 million of potential customers and another close to 10 million potential customers in Australia. So within our simplified model. So what about I run marketing campaign? I just try to attract the other households, number 2, to buy from me. So even if you're successful to convince household 2 to buy one single item, you probably will generate a handsome revenue growth. For instance, if Woolworths is able to differentiate its products, differentiate its services to customers, potential customers, they make household 2 to prefer the eggs provided by Woolworths. Maybe they provide eggs of ISPCA certified, free range, cage-free, and all kinds of choices at a little bit better price than Coles. The households will switch. They may still buy that majority of the grocery at Coles, but when you have the start to attract customers to shop one item with you, like the eggs. But later on, when they come into your shop to buy the eggs, they will say, okay, the bakery goods look nice. Why not I try this? And gradually, when you gain the trust of the new customers, you're going to see the drain of the revenue of Woolworths maybe further, and you can grow your revenue, and that will become not one box, 1.5 box. So that's another important driver of Woolies revenue. So try to differentiate your products and differentiate your services provided to customers and win over from your competitors. That will be another important driver of the real growth that we may expect Woolworths is going to achieve in the future if the management can successfully implement its turnaround approach. Anything else? There's some other possibilities that they can still grow the revenue, maybe by a small margin, but not really big, but it's still another possibility. But we have already come up with the two most important drivers of Woolworths revenue and revenue growth. Anything else? Yes, good. So right now, the two big food retailers, they have very good coverage of Australia. They have one important growth area, which is what? Did you read the annual report? They identified a growth area of opening up more shops in where? Anyone notice that thing of the strategic changes of the company going forward? They're going to open up more shops in where? Where? Now, they typically have shops in town centres, city centres, and what else?
Petrol stores?
Hmm?
Petrol stores? Petrol stores?
Excellent. You didn't say petrol, right?
No, metro.
Metro, yes. Why they are trying to open up more stores in the large metropolitan areas? Why? What's driving this initiative? They want to drive further of the revenue to cover more people. And that trend of targeting that growth area in the large cities like Sydney, Melbourne, and even Brisbane can be very successful. And that trend is driven by that single most important underlying driver as well, population movement. It is the demographic movement of Australian population that young people live longer with their parents in their parents' house, and more people choose to live in apartments which are closer to city where they work and closer to the bars and nice restaurants, to their social venues. So it's a trend that more young people, some of the young people, might move into apartments after leaving their parents' house. And some young families, even they choose to live in apartments closer to the city or right in the center of the city. It's, if you go to read the news stories of the population growth of the city centers, you will be amazed by the percentage, the jump of population in the city. Like, for example, in Canberra is not a good example, but Sydney, in Sydney City, there was only one supermarket just opposite Town Hall, entire city center. And quite a few years ago, when you go to buy a jar of jam, it's priced as 1/3 higher than the same product at a suburban store. So the rent is higher, and other fees and expenses might be higher. They can charge a higher margin on the products they sell in the city center. And in recent years, because of the population growth in the cities, especially Sydney and Melbourne, so they are targeting to capitalize on the very concentrated demographic changes within the city centers. That's one growth area for the company that has been identified to grow its revenue and revenue growth. Any comments or questions or you want to talk about? Okay, I think that's an example I tried to demonstrate the drivers of a business revenue. It's not just simply taking the revenue growth in the past 5 years. We really have to drill down to the bottom and think about how the company is going to generate revenue, and generating profit is another thing. So we focus on the business driver or revenue driver for this stage. You have to understand how these people will play a role in the revenue number reported by the company. It's not like something high-flying, really down to the earth. And don't forget the industry dynamics. Is Woolies competitive enough to win potential customers from Coles? You ask the question and you try to answer that question and build this into your revenue forecast. So this is basically what I try to guide you when you try to build your forecasting model. I'm very keen to talk about your progress of several groups. I'll call the group number, and if you're here, just stand up or just sit there, and I'd like to find out if you are on top of the assignment. Group 12, anyone here? Yes, good. We talked already. Yeah, so you'll pass. Group 16, here? Yes. So have you been having group meetings and discussing the model structure? Are you on progress of finishing your historical data? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Have you considered your forecasting model, or had any discussion about that? Not yet. Okay, good. So you may start doing that even this week. At the same time, when you finalize the historical spreadsheet, you might just spread the people into several groups to move together. If you leave this until the teaching break, it's kind of quite a hassle. Okay. Group 19. 19 here. Okay. That's okay. That's okay. I know what you are doing, and so you'll pass. 11. Okay, good. What's the progress of your assignment, please? Okay. Mm-hmm. Have you ever tried to input some data into the historical spreadsheet yet?
Yeah, we've done that. We just haven't looked at the forecast.
Oh, good, good. So you are on the track. Okay, good. Group 24? No? Okay, that's fine. 36? 36? No? All right, okay. Sorry, miss you.
Yeah, we're just finishing up putting in the historical data, and
Okay, good. So you have a few new members, as I remember. So you got no problem working together, right?
No, we've had meetings with split up the work as well.
Great, great. Very good. Okay, I'm done with this. I'm very happy about the progress, and I know a few groups are very advanced. They have been asking questions about forecasting and organizing, even talking about scenario analysis and sensitivity tests. So I have another 10 minutes to quickly talk about to give you some guidance to forecast the inputs for the weighted average cost of capital. So the notes is already on Wordle. You might go through each item by yourself. I want to highlight a few things is that when you run the regression to estimate beta, okay, you do have the numerical examples from the Excel file that demonstrates, okay, calculating the Shores-Williams beta and all the other fancy betas. Make sure you ask yourself, do I need these before you just copy-paste these formulas into your own spreadsheet? Without any judgment, you probably will introduce unnecessary adjustment and also the errors into your estimate of beta. Come to talk to me if you find anything really difficult to comprehend. I know some students are struggling with Excel, and come to talk to me if you don't even understand the basic line returns or the slope functions. We'll start from there. With the equity risk premium, I provide all of the source data and the models on Wordle for week 5. The equity risk premium estimation is not required. You only need to know that for your assignment, you may just use 6.1% or 6%. But if you're interested, you read through the models, how they are estimated, especially using the implied methods, because these are the methods used by practitioners. And they may be very helpful in the future when you sit with other candidates at a job interview, and that single point might differentiate yourself from the rest of the crowd. So that's something that's worth to look at, but it's not required for exam or for the assignment. To estimate the cost of debt, I want you to think about that going forward. If the company is going to make additional large-scale capex based on your judgment of the capital structure, is the company more likely to raise funds in Australia or in US? Then you decide which country risk-free rate you should use in your forecasting model. If you decide the company is able to issue more corporate bonds in Australia, use the 10-year Australian government bond as the risk-free rate, and you're going to forecast the interest coverage ratio. So find the credit rating, make your judgment, and find a reference of yield spread. So I provide you some tables I just downloaded from Reserve Bank of Australia of corporate bonds yield spreads in Australia and the government bond yield of the government instruments. So you might use this data to come up with your own estimates of how much the company has to pay in terms of interest to raise additional corporate bonds. If you decide the company is going to raise money in the US market, you probably should use the US government bond yield and use the yield spread in the US market. The spreadsheets are all available on Wordle. You just need to go through, have a look, and make use of them. There are other data available in the spreadsheet named assignment data for WACC. So you will have total return index, market valuation, and price for your reference. Make sure when you calculate returns, use the total return index. For the other methods to estimate the interest rate, cost of debt, you may have a look at the past financial year, especially in the past 2 years or several years, to calculate the effective interest rate by yourself, or you may find some clues of effective interest rate from the annual report. You may use this as the base of your forecast. Always remember, this effective interest rate is calculated based on historical data, but for valuation, we're trying to forecast the interest rate of marginal, additional company debt. So make your judgment, and these are additional approaches you may run. And it's also might be worthwhile to run a few models to forecast the cost of debt and find average or weighted average, or just make your own judgment after coming up with all of these estimates. Put them together, and given your understanding of the company's business going forward, and decide cost of debt. It can be different from anything, any of the numbers you calculated. Another reminder about the capital structure, make sure you use the market value as much as possible. Book value is distorted and out of date. Whenever there's a market value, we use the market value. So that's basically the key points of forecasting for the inputs for the WACC model. Any questions or things you would like to clarify? Anything before we conclude? With the quiz, you're going to have your results of quiz 1 this week, and I will ask the tutors to keep the quiz papers with them for another 2 weeks, teaching weeks. So until week 7, you can still go to your tutor to view your own quiz paper and talk to your tutor about what can be done to improve your understanding of doing these quiz questions. After week 7, tutors are going to return the quiz papers to me. So if you still want to view, have a chat with me, just come to talk to me after week 7. So we're going to roll over the quiz paper view and discussion until end of this semester. So you're not going to receive the quiz paper and take it home, but you have multiple opportunities to discuss this with me or the tutor, try to understand what's going wrong, and if there's anything you can do to improve your understanding of this. You probably have found out the quiz questions are quite straightforward. I didn't put a lot of tricks in it. You just need some very basic understanding of valuation, the framework. With the following, with the third and fourth quiz, they tend to be a little bit tricky, and they're going to test your understanding of the ROIC measures and other concepts in valuation. Calculation will be minimal, but mostly conceptual questions. So make sure you read the required readings of the textbook. That's very important for you to grasp the concepts. As the tutorial is up to 50 minutes, so the tutor has to run the quiz and talk about the solutions of previous quiz. So I asked them to choose the most difficult questions to discuss in that tutorial. If you have any concerns, let me know, or if you feel uncomfortable with this, let the tutor know or let me know, see how we can improve this process. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you very much. Yes? I can't hear you. Come forward. Thank you.
So, if from 2016 onwards, petrol is discontinued operations, do we consider that for the previous years as well, or according to
it will be up to you, and you have to make the judgment of benefits net, the size of that discontinued operation, or how you're going to use the historical performance measures in your forecasting. if this is really significant, like 1/3 or a quarter of the overall business, it's very important to remove it from all the historical data, right? So that you have a clean measure of ROIC. Yes, for consistency. And if that's only a 5%, you have to think about it.
So why not take it out?
Yeah, but make sure you adjust 2018 and 17 at least. The latest.